Hi guys, and welcome to the follow-up video of this full stack web development Codecademy series. In this one we will start working on the next module. Next module is called JavaScript Arrays, Loops and Objects, and the first section we will complete is called Scope. Learn about global and block level scopes in JavaScript, and let's start with this one. So scope, an important idea in programming is scope. Scope defines where variables can be accessed or referenced. While some variables can be accessed from anywhere within a program, other variables may only be available in a specific context. You can think of scope like the view of the night sky from your window. Everyone who lives on the planet Earth is in the global scope of the stars. The stars are accessible globally. Meanwhile, if you live in a city, you may see the city skyline or the river. The skyline and river are only accessible locally in your city, but you can still see the stars that are available globally. Over the next few exercises, we will explore how scope relates to variables and learn best practices for variable declaration. Instructions go to the next exercise to learn more about scope. Okay, let's proceed. Blocks and scope. Before we talk more about scope, we first need to talk about blocks. We have seen blocks used before in functions and if statements. A block is the code found inside a set of curly braces. Blocks help us group one or more statements together and serve as an important structural marker for our code. A block of code could be a function like this. So let's see. Okay, this is the arrow function syntax. We have a function expression, and this is considered the block code. Notice that the function body is actually a block of code. Observe the block in an if statement. So same thing here. In the next few exercises we will see how blocks define the scope of variables. Instructions, let's see. At the top of main.js file, right here, declare a const variable named city and set it equal to New York City. This variable will exist outside of the block, so it will be available globally. So const city equal to string New York City. Update our code. Below the city variable, write a function named log city skyline. Function log city skyline, and we are using the function declaration. Update our code. Inside of the function body of log city skyline, write another variable using let named skyscraper and set it equal to Empire State Building. So declare a variable using the let keyword, and the variable should be named skyscraper equal to string Empire State Building. Update our code. Inside the function, include a return statement like this. Okay, so we are returning the string, the stars over the, and then we are concatenating the variable skyscraper, and here we are concatenating the city variable. So this variable right here, the outside variable. Update our code. Beneath the log city skyline function, use console log to log the value of log city skyline to the console. So console.log, then call the function. You will notice that the log city skyline function is able to access both variables without any problems, and in the next exercise we will consider why would it be preferable to have one variable outside of a block and the other inside of a block. Let's see. And yes, we got everything printed to the console. Everything looks fine, and now let's proceed to the next exercise. In this one, let's learn about global scope. Scope is the context in which our variables are declared. We think about scope in relation to blocks because variables can exist either outside of or within these blocks. In global scope, variables are declared outside of blocks. These variables are called global variables because they can be accessed from anywhere in your script. Because global variables are not bound inside a block, they can be accessed by any code in the program, including code in blocks. Let's take a look at an example of global scope. Even though the color variable is defined outside of the block, it can be accessed in the function block, giving it global scope. So right here, this const variable can be accessed right here in this function expression because it is declared in the global scope. In turn, color can be accessed within the return sky color function block. So right here, let's work with global variables to see how data can be accessible from any place within a program. And let's see the instructions. At the top of main.js file, write 3 global variables. So the first one should be satellite, and it should be equal to the moon string. Let's copy and paste this one. So the next one is galaxy, and the value is the Milky Way. Next one is stars, and the value is North Star. Now let's update our code. Next instruction: below the variables created in the previous step, write a function named callMyNightSky. Inside the function, include a return statement like this. But first, let's create a function. And now let's copy this return statement, update our code, and now beneath the callMyNightSky function, use console.log to log the value of callMyNightSky function. So console.log. Now let's log the call to this function. You will notice that the function block for callMyNightSky function is able to access the global variables freely, since the variables are available to all lines of code in the file, because like we said, they are declared globally in the code. Now let's update the page, and we got logged everything to the console. So here is the first variable, here is the stars variable, and here is the galaxy variable. And that should be all for this one. Let's proceed to the next exercise. In this one, block scope, the next context we will cover is block scope. When a variable is defined inside a block, it is only accessible to the code within the curly braces. We say that variable has block scope because it is only accessible to the lines of code within that block, like we saw in function blocks or statement blocks, if statement blocks, for loops, and so on and so forth. Variables that are declared with block scope are known as local variables because they are only available to the code that is part of the same block. Block scope works like this, and let's see the example. So we have a function expression log sky color, Then we declared a color variable inside of that function right here. If you try to console.log that variable, you will get the reference error. And let's see, we define a function log sky color right here. Within the function, the color variable is only available within the curly braces of the function. So just in this block right here, if we try to log the same variable outside the function right here, it throws a error, reference error. Okay. In main.js, define a function log visible light waves. So function update our code. Now within that function, using const keyword, create a variable light waves and set it equal to moonlight. Oops. So the value should be moonlight. Update our code. Within the log visible light waves function, beneath the light waves variable, add a console.log statement that will log the value of the light waves variable when the function runs. Okay, so let's set the console.log, and we should log this function, this variable, sorry. Okay, that should be fine. And now call the log visible light waves function from outside the function, of course. So let's call the function, update our code, and we got moonlight. Print to the console. Beneath the function call, log the value of light waves to the console from outside of the function. So let's use the console.log again, but now let's try to log this variable light waves. Yeah, same thing. And here we got the reference error saying that light waves is not defined. Everything is correct. Let's proceed to the next exercise. This one is called scope pollution. It may seem like a great idea to always make your variables accessible, but having too many global variables can cause problems in a program. When you declare global variables, they go to the global namespace. The global namespace allows the variables to be accessible from anywhere in your program. These variables remain there until the program finishes, which means our global namespace can fill up really quickly. Scope pollution is when we have too many global variables that exist in the global namespace, or when we reuse variables across different scopes. Scope pollution makes it difficult to keep track of our different variables and sets us up for potential accidents. For example, globally scoped variables can collide with other variables that are more locally scoped, causing unexpected behavior in our code. Let's look at an example of scope pollution in practice so we know how to avoid it. Let's see the example. So we have a variable num, which is equal to 50, so integer 50. Inside the function body of log num, right here, we want to declare a new variable but forgot to use the let keyword. So right here, when we call log num, num gets reassigned to 100. So right here, the reassignment inside log num affects the global variable num. So this line of code right here updates this variable num to 100. Even though the reassignment is allowed and we won't get an error if we decided to use num later, we will unknowingly use the new value for the num variable. While it is important to know what global scope is, it is best practice to not define variables in the global scope. Okay, keep in mind that. Let's see what happens if we create a variable that overrides a global variable. Inside the call my night sky function, on the very first line of the function body, assign the variable stars to Sirius as such. So right here, let's copy the value, run our program, and now outside the function, under the current console log statement, right here, add another console.log statement to log stars to the console. Okay, so we are logging the stars variable. First we had north star value for the stars variable, but right here we updated the value to Sirius, and now we should get this printed to the console. You will notice that the global variable stars was reassigned to Sirius. In other words, we changed the value of the global stars variable, but it is not easy to read what exactly happened. This is bad practice in code maintainability and could impact our program in ways we do not intend. And now let's run our program. And right here we got Sirius printed to the console, because like we said, we updated the value of the stars variable. And now let's proceed to the next exercise. This one is called practice good scoping. Given the challenges with global variables and scope pollution, we should follow best practices for scoping our variables as tightly as possible using block scope. Tightly scoping your variables will greatly improve your code in several ways. First, it will make your code more legible, since the blocks will organize your code into discrete sections. It makes your code more understandable, since it clarifies which variables are associated with different parts of the program, rather than having to keep track of them line after line. It is easier to maintain your code, since your code will be modular. It will save memory in your code because it will cease to exist after the block finishes running. Here is another example of how to use block scope as defined within an if block. Let's see. So here you will notice that we create a variable dusk right here inside the log sky color function. This is the function. This is the function block. After the if statement, we define a new code block with the curly braces. So right here we assign a new value to the variable color if the if statement is truthy. Within the if block, the color variable holds the value pink. Now outside the if block, in the function body, the color variable holds the value blue. Right here. While we use block scope, we still pollute our namespace by reusing the same variable name twice. A better practice would be to rename the variable inside the block. Block scope is a powerful tool in JavaScript, since it allows us to define variables with precision and not pollute the global namespace. If a variable does not need to exist outside a block, it shouldn't. Okay, inside the function body of log visible light waves, right here is the body. Beneath the region variable and before the provided console log statement, create an if statement that checks if the region is the Arctic. So if statement, don't forget the curly braces, so if the region variable is equal to string the Arctic. Okay, run our program. Okay, let's try with the triple equal sign. Okay, now it's fine. Inside the if block, define a new let variable light waves and set it equal to northern lights. So using the let keyword, of course, because it is block specific. light waves equal to northern lights string. Run our program. And now beneath the variable in the if block, use console log to log the value of the block variable inside the if block. Okay, let's copy this one. So console log light waves. Okay, run your code and notice the output inside the if block. This console log logs the value northern lights to the console outside the if block. This one right here, but still within the function. The same statement logs moonlight to the console. And let's run our program. And yeah, we got that. First we got logged northern lights. Here is the line of code. And then we got logged moonlight value right here. Because light waves outside of this if block has the value of moonlight. However, inside of this if block it has the value of northern lights. So two separate variables. And that should be all for this one. Let's proceed to the next one. This one is review of everything we did so far in this first scope section. Close this pop-up message. In this lesson you'll learn about the scope and how it impacts the accessibility of different variables. Let's review the following terms. Scope is the idea in programming that some variables are accessible, inaccessible from other parts of the program. Blocks are statements that exist within curly braces. Global scope refers to the context within which variables are accessible to every part of the program. Global variables are variables that exist within global scope. Block scope refers to the context within which variables that are accessible only within the block they are defined. Local variables are variables that exist within block scope. Global namespace is the space in our code that contains globally scoped information or variables. Scope pollution is when too many variables exist in a namespace or variable names are reused. As you continue your coding journey, remember to use best practices when declaring your variables. Scoping your variables tightly will ensure that your code has clean, organized, and modular logic. Practice the concepts you have learned in the code editor. Okay, this should be all for this scope section when it comes to the lessons. In the next one, we will finish our first project in this scope module, and let's continue. So the project is called Training Days. So training days. As a seasoned athlete, one of your favorite activities is running marathons. You use a service called Training Days that sends you a message for the event you signed up for and the days you have left to train. Since you also code, Training Days has asked you to help them solve a problem. The program currently uses the wrong scope for its variables. They know this can be troublesome as their service evolves. In this project, you will make training days more maintainable and less error-prone by fixing variable scopes. And like usual, if you get stuck during this project or would like to see an experienced developer work through it, click Get Help to see a project walkthrough video. And that's why I'm here, to help you go through this project. So we have 12 tasks. The first one, let's see. Let's begin by running the training days.js file. In the console, we can see that the program is broken. Yeah, we got an error saying that days is not defined. Ideally, the getRound event function selects an event at random. So this function right here, the getTrainingDays function, returns the number of days to train based on the event selected. The log event and log time functions print the athlete name, event, and number of days to the console, but poorly scoped variables are causing errors. Okay, this one is checked. Expand days scope. To avoid the reference error, declare days within the getTrainingDays function before the if statement. So days is not defined, error. Right here, let me see, up right here, we are using the let days, but we are declaring the variable days with the let keyword inside of this if statement, inside of its block. So that's why we cannot access that variable inside of this function, and that's why we need to declare that variable right here, and then we can just omit these keywords and use the days variable. To avoid the reference error, declare days within the getTrainingDays function before the if statement. Let's run our code. You see, now there is no error anymore. Run the program again, no error, but days is undefined. New days variables are being defined in the scope of each if-else if statement. Delete the 3 lets within the if-else if statements. And I already did that, and that's why we didn't get the undefined value, and everything looks fine. So this one is also completed. Run the program again, and now it should be fixed. Now the if-else if statements are changing the original days rather than defining a new one, because we omitted the let keyword, and now we are not declaring the variables. We are just updating the already declared variable right here, and this one is also completed. And now let's see, make name global. The log functions, so log event and log time, use the same name variable. Let's see, so right here and right here. There seems to be a problem with the scoping. We can tell by the amount of duplicate code here. Yeah, first we declared name variable right here, and then again right here. In addition to variables scoped too broadly, duplicate code can indicate that a variable may be scoped too tightly. Let's avoid this repetition by adding name as the first parameter for each function. Okay, so name, now we need parentheses, so first parameter name, then we have the event, same right here, name, and then we have the days parameter. Now let's see, should we delete this right now? I guess not. Move the name variable to global scope, so delete this one, actually delete this one. Const name, just declare the variable, don't assign any value to it right now. Pass name as the first argument to log event and log time functions. So log event and log time. So name variable right here, name variable. This one is completed, this one and this one. Check that the program still works, run it and check the output. Let's run our code. Let's see, syntax error, missing initializer in const declaration. And this is my bad, I forgot that constants need to have a value by default. So now let's update our code, and everything looks fine. Okay, check that the program still works. Okay, just completed. Okay, try the functions for another competitor. Copy and paste this code at the end of the file. Okay, let's copy this one. run the program. The events are assigned randomly, but Nyla and Warren are running the same events. Yeah, Nyla is running marathon, Warren is running marathon. Same events. We see that the random variable is defined in the global scope. Right here. Each time get rand event is called, it uses the same value. Of course, at the top of the file, move the random variable from the global scope to block scope within the get rand event function. So inside of the function, not inside of the if statement. And now let's save our code. And now we got Nyla's event is pentathlon and Warren's event is marathon. Okay, that should be fine. Well done. Training days is more maintainable and less error prone thanks to your work. Run the program a few times to make sure the results are randomized. So let's run our code again. Now they are both running the same event again. Okay, it's different now. Same triathlon and marathon. Same, and so on and so forth. So that should be all for this one. We fixed this code right here. We changed the scope of the variables, and now the program is more maintainable and less error prone. And now let's proceed to the quiz on scopes. So scope quiz. And now let's start with the quiz. We have 7 questions in total. The first one, how many global variables are there in the following block of code? Let's see. So input variable, next we have control val variable, and then we have multiplier variable. This is also a variable, this function right here. So input, control val, and multiplier. Right here is the right answer. What will be the output of this code? Let's see. So let's say hello, hi there, const say goodbye, goodbye, function say hello, we updated the value to ciao, console log say hello, console log say goodbye. So this will be ciao, and this one will be goodbye. This one should be the right answer, yep. Which best defines a variable with block scope? A variable that is available within a function. A variable that is defined within a block and only available inside a block. Outside of block, through a program, and this one is the right answer, I guess, yep. What will be the output of this code right here? So all the variables declared inside a function, then we are trying to console log one of those variables, and this will throw an error. Destination is not defined, of course. Which variables possess block scope? Let's see. So this one, I guess. And also don't forget these 2 arguments here, or parameters. They are also variables of this function right here. So let's see, all number of face, this one should be the right answer, yep. What is preferable, defining variables in the global scope or defining variables in the block scope? Let's see, defining variables in the block scope. Variables defining at the block scope level can still be used at the global level. This is false. Defining variables in the global scope and the block scope are equally preferable. Defining variables in the block scope. Variables defined in the global scope can cause unexpected behavior in our code. And defining variables in the global scope. Variables defined in the block scope are restrictive and often conflict with variables defined in the global scope, and this one I guess should be the right answer. Yep. And what is a globally scoped variable? Let's see, a variable that is accessible to any part of the program, and this is the right answer. We can access that variable from any part of the script. Yep, this is correct, of course, and that should be all for this first section. Thanks for watching and see you guys in the next one.